Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're jumping right into what is literally a ticking geopolitical clock in Northern Ireland. We're going to untangle this massive, complex knot of history, politics, and sectarian division that, honestly, has just been thrust right back into the global spotlight. And look, this matters right now because a peace deal that the whole world basically looked at as a total miracle, well, it's starting to fracture. So let's dive into it. Here's our roadmap for today. First, the spark of violence. Then, ghosts of the troubles. 3, the Brexit shockwave. 4, the unhealed wounds. 5, the Unionist crisis. And finally, a precarious future. All right, part 1, the spark of violence, the return of the terror threat. So what's genuinely alarming right now is the stark reality on the ground. After 25 years of relative peace, security sources are suddenly reporting gun attacks, car bombs, and even attempted murders of police officers. It got so bad that MI5 actually raised the terror threat in Northern Ireland to severe, which means an attack is highly likely. The demons of a really war-torn history are waking back up, and it proves that time alone hasn't totally wiped away the region's memory. And that brings us to the core mystery of our explainer today. Why is a peace agreement, one that was championed by global leaders and celebrated all over the world, why is it suddenly ready to explode? Well, to understand just how fragile this ecosystem is today, we've got to look backwards. Section 2. Ghosts of the Troubles. The historical context. At the very foundation of all this is a really profound clash of destinations. On one side, you have Catholic Republican nationalists who are seeking a united Ireland. And on the exact opposite side, you have Protestant loyalist unionists who are deeply, deeply attached to remaining part of the United Kingdom. Two distinct identities sharing one land. It's basically the ultimate clash of national identity. Let's quickly track how this played out over time. In 1921, the partition of Ireland actually created Northern Ireland. That kept 6 predominantly Protestant counties under British rule, while the rest of Ireland gained its independence. Now, fast forward to 1969, and those simmering political tensions just completely erupted into a bloody 30-year conflict we now call the Troubles. Literally, neighbor fought neighbor, leading to about 3,500 tragic deaths. But then, in 1998, against all odds, the miraculous Good Friday Agreement was signed. It halted the violence and brought sworn enemies into this incredibly delicate power-sharing government. Now, the absolutely crucial point of that 98 agreement was the creation of what we call the invisible border. Think about this. All the military checkpoints, the watchtowers, the physical barriers separating Northern Ireland from the Republic of Ireland, they were completely dismantled. The brilliant, almost magic trick of the Good Friday Agreement was that it allowed citizens to hold an Irish passport, a British passport, or both. It completely diluted those hard lines of identity. And because of that, an entire generation of young people, they call them peace babies, were able to grow up totally without war, crossing that border seamlessly every single day. Moving on to Section 3, the Brexit shockwave, the outside disruptor. As one local peace builder put it, the one thing we never discussed in all the months and years of the Good Friday Agreement was the UK leaving the European Union. And wow, did that change things. In 2016, Brexit dragged Northern Ireland out of the EU entirely against its local majority. It suddenly forced the whole region to talk about sovereignty again. It basically ripped wide open that taboo subject of national identity that the Good Friday Agreement had so carefully put to rest. And practically speaking, this triggered a logistical nightmare. Because the UK left the EU customs union, merchandise suddenly needed checking. But putting up a hard land border, that could immediately trigger Republican violence from dissidents who see any border infrastructure as British occupation. So what was the alternative? The Northern Ireland Protocol. To avoid that land border, negotiators basically drew a brand new customs border right down the middle of the Irish Sea, effectively separating Northern Ireland from the rest of Great Britain. Section 4. The unhealed wounds, living with the legacy. Look, while peace definitely exists on paper, the physical reality on the ground is a lot more complex. You've got former sworn enemies, like former IRA bomber Robert McClanahan and loyalist paramilitary Noel Large, who are actually running joint reconciliation tours today, which is amazing. But at the exact same time, their communities are still literally separated by these vast, imposing physical walls. So true societal peace, it still lags pretty far behind. And honestly, this next statistic is just absolutely staggering. 97%. That's the percentage of social housing in Belfast that remains strictly segregated between Catholics and Protestants to this day. And get this, less than 9% of young people go to integrated schools. It's a deeply, deeply divided society where, in some districts, people literally only feel safe when they're barricaded in at night. Then, you have to add in the legacy of profound injustice. Back in 1972, during Bloody Sunday, 14 unarmed people were killed by British soldiers. For over 50 years, families, like the brother of 17-year-old victim Michael Kelly, have fought relentlessly for justice. But in 2023, the UK passed a highly controversial amnesty law, and despite massive public outrage in Northern Ireland, this law protects those soldiers from prosecution and essentially halts over 1,200 ongoing inquests. For so many victims' families, it genuinely feels like their past is being forcefully erased by London. Which brings us to Section 5, the Unionist Crisis, an existential threat. To really grasp this, listen to how it feels on the ground for Unionists. One local said, "This is not about a trade deal for me. The changes to the Acts of Union affects my Britishness." See, the Northern Ireland Protocol, that customs border in the Irish Sea we talked about, Unionists and Loyalists didn't view that as just some technical trade hiccup. To them, it's a profound political betrayal. It's an economic wedge that effectively dismantles their equal place within the United Kingdom. It literally threatens their very Britishness. And there's a huge demographic shift that's compounding those fears exponentially right now. In the 2021 census, Catholics officially outnumbered Protestants in Northern Ireland for the very first time in the region's history. Remember, this state was originally designed a century ago to maintain a perpetual Unionist majority. Now, those historical citadels are falling. The Union Jack was removed from flying every single day at Belfast City Hall, and the Republican Party, Sinn Féin, has actually scored historic legislative election victories, completely overtaking the Unionists. This existential crisis provoked an immediate and frankly terrifying response. Just as dissident Republicans had threatened violence over a land border, Loyalist paramilitaries started threatening violence over the sea border. They sent open letters threatening to break the ceasefire. And this culminated in some really scary acts, like a van driver being hijacked at gunpoint and forced to drive a hoax bomb to a church just to disrupt a visit from the Republic of Ireland's foreign minister. The message they're sending is crystal clear. A wounded animal is at its most dangerous. Section 6. A precarious future. The looming border poll. So the 1998 Good Friday Agreement actually includes a provision for a self-determination referendum, which is often called a border poll. Because of these massive demographic shifts and all the chaos of Brexit, nationalists are currently pushing really hard for unity vote by the end of this decade. They feel the momentum is stronger than it's ever been, but loyalists are viscerally, deeply entrenched against it. As our sources noted, prominent loyalist voices have openly vowed that they would rather risk a civil war, literally saying they'd choke on their own blood, than surrender the Union and be absorbed into an all-island republic. It's a highly, highly dangerous collision course. But there's actually a crucial glimmer of hope here. As one local observed, what's important is that the past doesn't dictate the present, and the past doesn't dictate the future. There's a whole younger generation in Northern Ireland who just refuses to be held hostage by history. As they're out buying houses, starting families, getting jobs, a lot of them are just deeply frustrated by this binary choice of the past. They just want peace, they want functionality, and they want a future that isn't dictated by rigid, old historical identities. Which leaves us with this final thought to chew on. As these demographics continue to shift, and the post-Brexit realities really settle in, are the people of Northern Ireland going to be able to diffuse this explosive border question? Or will the ghosts of the past tear apart what the whole world celebrated as Europe's greatest miracle of peace? The stakes literally couldn't be higher, and it's a situation the entire world is watching incredibly closely. Thanks so much for joining me on this explainer. I really hope it helped you wrap your head around this incredibly complex geopolitical ecosystem. Keep learning, and I'll see you next time.